That might be my end, but you have to check.
Huh. Let's see. Yeah, because it just says upcoming. Oh, no, we're live.
Oh,
We're live. I don't know if anybody's. Yeah. Okay. Can everybody see this? It looks like we're live.
all right.
Seems like
It
we're
was got to
live.
be my end. Wow. I don't even see my icon.
No, your icon's not there. Okay. What you need to do is you need to go into and switch it and then switch it back and it should be fine.
Okay.
So, yeah, everybody's saying they had to refresh. So, I don't know what's going on. YouTube being weird. So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Seven Kinds of Mischief. I'm your host, Stone Loki. And with me today, of course, is my co-host, the Mad Doctor, Adega Outlaw.
I am here, finally. I thought my computer was doing really odd things to me. It should sound better, too. Keep switching to the wrong mic.
Yeah, we can see it, Pat S. We can see you. Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
We've got Chris Persia, Psychodorf 9, Pat S. Maybe an early Devil's Night prank by Mama Susan. That could be it, Chris. Old Gamer 72 Cutlass, good evening. Psychodorf 9, good evening. Lord Thoth, what's up, Lord Thoth? Good evening. So, yeah.
I bummed us out. Did you guys hear Coach?
I heard Coach.
Hey, I heard him. Louise is here,
Louise.
too.
Hello, Louise. Hello, you're live on Seven Kinds of Mischief. Yeah, oh crap.
Sorry, I'm still getting over the confusion of the whole start. It's like, I think something's wrong here, and it was. Sorry. Very sorry.
It's all good. It's crazy.
How you been, Loki? Recovered from the weekend?
I'm still a little bit. I did some traveling yesterday. But when I got home, my back was like, I don't like you. But besides that, yeah, pretty much recovered from the crazy weekend. It was a crazy weekend. We had so much fun with everybody. It was nuts. And you were a part of that.
It's just going to get better every year.
So if anybody doesn't know, Adega sent a cake to Free Play for Friday. It was absolutely nuts. I did not know about it. I was absolutely surprised. If you haven't seen that, go back and look at live from Free Play. It's still up. You even get to see me.
It's towards the end of the video, so go to like probably the last 10 minutes or so.
People are gonna be like, "Oh my god, that's Loki."
Yeah, that's the deer in the headlights, Loki. What is going on, man?
Yeah, it was an insane cake that Adega sent, and they'd been planning that for months. You want to talk about conspiracies? That was one hell of a conspiracy. That's the kind of conspiracies we have in.
I'm happy to do it.
So,
but we are just a few days before your actual birthday and the All Hallows Eve, the Devil's Night, all of that fun stuff.
Devil's Night is Sunday, so tomorrow night. Oh, it is?
Angel's Night's the night before. Devil's Night is Halloween.
Oh, I thought Devil's Night was the 30th.
Well, in Detroit, where I came from, they always called it Angel's Night because the parents had all come out and make sure they didn't have any houses burning down or gunshots in people's homes and stuff. So, I don't know.
So, yeah, we're going to have like a birthday stream tomorrow night, I think. So,
you get a birthday week.
I get a birthday week. God help me. And weekend. I've got stuff to do this weekend too. So going out to eat on Saturday, and then I'm not doing anything on Sunday.
Busy man.
I'm not.
You're watching movies or something.
I'm gonna hang out, watch some TV. I've got a stereo thing I need to set up because I got not surround sound speakers, but stereo speaker things. And I'm gonna set up in the living room and the big theater room we got, and yeah. So
Cool. Cool. Well, instead of boring you folks to death, I don't have a lot tonight, but I do have a couple of things. First off, I'm going to tell you a story, then show you a story. Nothing real scary. Well, I guess the second one's little, but you could see some of the stuff that I like to do with top fives. They actually shared one of my personal stories instead of the other stuff. But all of us have different feelings about Halloween, and it's always been a fun thing for me. And if you have a story of your childhood, share with Chad or Loki if you want to share in a minute. But if you got a sec, I was going to give it to you, but I didn't. Back when I was a kid, the LA Rams at the time had a well-known player because he had a sick brother. They did charity things, and he was quite outstanding. But he was known as a celebrity in the area, and I lived in a place where there was middle class, and then right around the corner was upper class, and then just around the corner from that was your way out of your league class. So, kids trick or treat. One of our friends is old enough to drive. We went to where the ultra upper class was, and we don't want to go too far into it because the houses get too far away and you only get to see about 2 or 3 houses. Granted, they give you massive candy bars, but so we went to one place where we knew we were going to hit the mother lode, and we were walking and knocking on doors, and we knocked on this one door, and my friends all stopped and stared for a little bit, and this guy gave out these giant candy bars, the big ones at the time. And Pat, it's back in the day. And so we walked away, and I hear him. They said, "Was that Jim Youngblood? Was that Jim Youngblood?" And I said, "Who's that?" And I said, "Oh, he plays for the Rams." And I didn't know players. I can't even remember names now. I didn't even remember when I was a kid. So I went back up to the door and knocked on the door, and I decided to pay attention to who it was instead of the candy. And this guy was a mountain, and his neck started at his ears and went to his shoulders, out at the, just one big giant V of a neck. And I looked up at this guy and said, "You Jim Youngblood?" And he put his finger up to his mouth, goes, "Shh, yeah." And he gave me another big candy bar. So, we
nice.
It was fun. It was fun. But that, that's one of those kid stories. You meet a celebrity by accident, and he was super nice guy. And again, he was running a charity of some kind of cancer that his brother had that passed away. But it was fun. But around the same area, I had an experience when I was older, and I'm going to let the narrator from Top Fives explain it to you. So Loki has a video that they've been doing a whole bunch of things for Halloween, a whole bunch of things. So this is something that was part of one of their videos. This was an actual number 3 out of 5 that they presented on this video.
This next true experience was sent to us by Adega Outlaw, an author and fellow YouTuber who has done work for us in the past. When Adega was 17, he and his friends went fishing one night at Seal Beach, a local harbor in Southern California between Long Beach and Huntington Beach where he grew up. It was late evening when the group left the harbor after catching and cooking fish on the shore. Because Adega was one of 2 drivers, he spent the next hour taking friends home, but later realized he had left some valuable equipment back on the beach, so he returned with his father to retrieve it. The road to the harbor passed through what was called the Miracle Mile. This stretch of road passed through Seal Beach Marine Base, a military munitions depot. The street had very few streetlights, only about one every 300 meters, and the road had a high speed limit of 50 miles per hour. Dead center on the stretch of road, and exactly between the 2 lights, where it was most dark, Adega's headlights caught a woman standing right in the middle of his lane. He had to swerve immediately to avoid hitting her, but she didn't flinch at all. She just stood there crying dreadfully. Adega was the only car on the road, and there was nothing for a half mile either way. Only high fences and marine bunkers on either side of the road. When he turned around to see if he could assist the woman, she had vanished. There was nothing. She had nowhere to go and nowhere to hide, yet she was gone. Adega believed whatever or whoever it was supernatural.
Yeah, that was one freaky experience.
Lady in White. I have heard that story before. That goes kind of like arm in arm with the Black Dog.
Yeah. No, it was just the last second when all of a sudden, boom, there was this person on the road. My dad saw it. I was quick enough to swerve. Whether or not, obviously, we both saw her, but there was nothing there.
And poof, she was gone.
Yeah. It's weird. I could describe it. She was wearing shorts, the Levi's shorts at the time that were cut off and almost to her butt. She had a halter top. Her left hand was holding her right elbow with her right hand on her face with her head leaned into it, long black hair, and just bawling her head off. And then gone. Just disappeared.
That's crazy. That's crazy. What did you do after that?
My dad and I tried to pretend like it wasn't anything exciting, except we both knew we saw something unusual. But I had to go back and get the equipment anyway. So we went back, picked up the equipment at the beach, and then went home. And there was no one there.
Why is it always women? It's always women. It's
I don't
never.
know. There's every once in a while there's a few men. They have some videos of them on top fives. They said I could use anything of their stuff. So one time I did bring up one of the serial killers that I did was from one of their reports. But you can find in some of the stuff where they'll have videos of both men and women that people have recorded with their dash cams. Some of them you could tell are fake, and they just present it here. Take a look at this. It's kind of freaky, but they don't provide any evidence. And other times, like there's this one out of India. I think it was out of India recently, where they were on a very obscure road and they're driving along and you see a woman walking the same direction as the car. So you just see her dress and her top and her black hair. You don't see her face or anything. And it's within a matter of 300 meters, maybe, you see someone on the opposite side of the road dressed exactly the same way, walking the same way. And then not around another turn, there was the same person again. That's when the driver freaked out because they saw the same person within the span of less than a mile where they see the person 3 times. So they have things like that on video. But it was a while back where I shared the story with my contact with the top fives. And she asked, well, do you want us to share it? I said, that's up to you, whatever you want to do with it. I just thought it was interesting, and I was writing, and I put it down, and here you go. And so obviously they thought it was cool enough to put on the show. But that was real. That was real. So, yeah, when I talk to you about supernatural stuff, I've had lots and lots of experiences. Did I stop? No, I turned around, and the way the road was, it was you had 2 lanes going each way. And then you had a berm that was maybe 10 meters tops, 7 meters. And then there was the tall military fences on either side with barbed wire. They did not want anyone getting in there. My dad had done some work for them with the tractor equipment years past, and he said they had the radioactive symbols, so they were some type of radioactive munitions were stored there. They're the regular military bunkers where everything's underground and you have the one cement concrete door that just kind of tapers up, and they're all over the place there. So no one was getting in, no one was getting out. There's no cars on the road. She wasn't on either side of the road. It was just there's no reason to stop because there was no one there.
Yeah. For those of you that have never heard this story, I'll tell it really quick before we get to our journal entry, the last journal entry in this set. So I'm like 14, 15 years old, and I'm at my girlfriend's dad's house. Now, this house is very, very, very old. It's on bricks. It wasn't on cinder blocks. It was on bricks. So there's like brick pylons almost holding this house up. And we're sitting there and we're watching Hercules in the Underworld.
Yeah.
Which is the Kevin Sorbo.
Yep.
Yeah. And I see something in my peripheral and I turn my head to the right and there's a woman standing there in a brown dress with a white, like a white thing in front of her, almost like you would, something you would put on when you're cooking, or the like old timey nurse, you know, the white sheet in front. And she holds her finger up to her mouth like she's shushing me, and walks into the room. And my girlfriend taps me on the shoulder and is like, "Hey, you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I swear I just saw." And she goes, "A woman in a brown dress." Before I could even finish saying what I was saying, she's like, "A woman in a brown dress, an apron. Thank you, Werewolf Jeeves." Because I'm, mentally handicapped at the moment, for God's sakes. I'm just tired. I'm tired. It was a long weekend and it's been a crazy week. I drove a lot yesterday. Anyway, and I'm like, she tells me this used to be a Civil War hospital. You're not the only one who's ever seen her. And I get up and I go look. I go look in that back room. There's no way out of that room. There's nobody in the back of the house, and there's no other way out of the house besides the windows. And these are all old rickety windows. You could hear it if someone was trying to like mess with and jimmy up the windows. And it's the only time anything like that's ever happened. Ever to me. It's just it's so freaky that she knew exactly what I saw, because I wasn't the only one who'd seen this woman in the brown dress with the white apron on that obviously was some kind of nurse or something. So.
Yeah, he told us this a while back, Pat. It's been a while, though.
Yeah, it's been a while. Okay. What an amazing story, Adega. Thank you. Woman in white. It's always women. It's always women, like I was saying. All right. So we're going to read part 3 of R.M. Staniforth's Journal of a Psychopath. This is called Finding Adeline. You can find this on Reddit. R.M. Staniforth writes wonderful horror. I'm so privileged that he's been like, yeah, read my stuff, please. So here we go. I just finished my junior year at university. I elected to take summer courses to avoid getting smothered by Sarah all summer, especially given her newest life choices. When I'd go home for Christmas break, Dean and Sarah sat me down to tell me the exciting news. "You're going to be a big brother," Sarah told me, while Dean supportively rubbed her shoulders. Gross, I thought to myself. Why anyone would choose to have a crying, pungent little crotch goblin in their home was beyond me. But honestly, a baby is what they wanted this whole time. I'm a transient teenager, as I was when they adopted me. A true family involves children that grow up knowing who mom and dad are, and Sarah wanted a true family. Still, Sarah and Dean had done a lot for me in hopes to make me feel like family. I needed to keep giving them that satisfaction, at least until my rent check wasn't coming from their bank account anymore. Sarah was staring at me intently with a look in her eye that, for some reason, longed for my approval. I put on my loving, grateful foster son expression that I'd been practicing since high school. "Oh my God, that's so great," I told Sarah as I reached forward and softly grabbed her hand. "I'm really happy for you. For us. I can't believe I'm going to have a little brother." "Sister," Sarah finished as she pushed a strand of brown hair from my eyes. "We're adopting a baby girl. She'll be born in just under 6 months. A gentle smile worked its way across her face. I tried my best to mirror her expression, but part of me wanted to stick a knife in her throat, right then and right there. I pictured what her pretty face would look like with a gaping hole across her neck, curved gently to match her smile. Well, I'd better throw those steaks on the grill, Dean said, reminding me why I need to continue to be their devoted adopted son. Sustenance and money. Until I was able to bankroll myself, I needed their routing number on my side. It wasn't hard to convince Dean and Sarah that I needed to take summer classes, given that I was a double major in finance and business management. Still had plenty of advanced classes needed for my graduation. Summer semester wasn't as necessary as I made it sound, but Dean and Sarah trusted me blindly, as fools do, and insisted they keep paying for my apartment. The state continued to pay my tuition anyhow, practically begging foster kids to become anything besides felons. I only actually signed up for 2 classes, however, because I had something else I needed to accomplish in my summer semester. By now, I was absolutely sure that my psychopathic condition, after all, when I stabbed Brian just to frame Jake, I felt no remorse. Actually, I loved it. When I killed Dustin with his own drugs and 2 other kids I had never met died in the crossfire, I still felt absolutely nothing. According to my observation of most normal people, I should feel remorse. Students and members of the community who had nothing to do with those kids even showed sadness and remorse, holding a vigil for the dead druggies. There was one thing, one nagging little annoyance in the back of my head that I needed to understand. A little thought that left an unintelligible twinge somewhere deep inside as it crossed my dreams and thoughts. That nag had to do with Adeline, who was once my foster sister when I was 8 years old. Adeline raised questions in my life, questions that required answers. I've watched people suffer. I've even been the one to cause their suffering. And never once did I care to empathize with anyone. Anyone, that is, with the exception of Adeline. Although most of my childhood memories aren't much more than a blur of the past, my few months with Addie I remember quite well. At the time, she was just 6 years old, 2 years younger than I was. I'd been at my new hell of a foster home only a couple of weeks before she arrived. Darren, the bastard who was our foster host, was usually sober and well-dressed when the social worker parked in front of the house. Darren opened the door to reveal a very pretty, blue-eyed girl with long, silvery blonde hair. She wore a purple dress that matched the oversized bow tangled with her blonde curls. Darren stayed home with foster kids while his wife worked long hours at multiple restaurants. He put on a facade of a warm foster dad to the outside world, but truthfully, he was just a lazy alcoholic yelling at your kids, whipping us boys with a belt anytime we frustrated him. Addie, however, received a different kind of treatment. The other boys would get jealous when we were forced to do daily chores in the fear of getting the belt if we didn't finish them to Darren's liking. Meanwhile, Addie sat on the chair with him as he drank cheap whiskey and watched TV. While the 4 of us boys were crammed into one small bedroom, Addie had her own room, all to herself. Those boys hated her for it, calling her names whenever Darren was out of earshot, but I could see that Addie wasn't enjoying her special attention. She seemed more scared of Darren than any of us boys. Every day her smile was further away, and every day her stunning blue eyes grew dimmer. Almost daily, Darren would take Adeline into her room to play, which was far more than he did for the rest of us. He even locked the door to keep the rest of us out. I couldn't help to notice, though, that Addie never wanted to play. She wanted to do anything but that. One time, he forgot to lock the door, so I opened the door a crack to see what sort of games they were playing. Darren never saw me, but Addie did. Her tear-filled blue eyes stared at me, begging me for help, for someone to make it stop. That was the only time I'd ever wanted to help someone for the sake of helping them. I went downstairs and found the first fragile thing in sight, an ugly vase, and knocked it off its shelf. The shatter of the vase was enough to draw Darren out of Addie's room into a drunken rage, belt in the hand, ready to punish. The lashings were painful, but felt way worth it. That night, Darren fell asleep on the couch while the TV was still playing. Per usual, he had passed out with a nearly empty bottle in his hand. He often passed out drunk hours before his wife got home from a long day of work, which gave me plenty of time to snoop around. I already knew exactly where he kept his revolver, not that it was well hidden. He kept it in the top drawer of his dresser, next to his socks and loose change. Using a stool to reach the top drawer and a dish rag to hold the gun, I retrieved the revolver and put the stool away. I'd never used a gun before, but I'd watched enough TV to know that I needed to pull the hammer back until it clicked. Pull the trigger. It wasn't easy, but using both hands, I managed to pull the hammer back while keeping the rag between my fingers and the metal. Darren was snoring with his mouth open, making it easy. I stood next to him on the couch and gently placed the barrel into his mouth, facing upwards towards the brain. I made sure to have the gun upside down, picturing how someone would hold a gun if they were to shoot themselves. After the gun was in place, I pulled the trigger. To my horror, the trigger didn't budge. I pulled harder, but still nothing. It didn't move. It looked so easy in the movies. Nothing could have prepared me for how hard it was to actually shoot a gun. Horn turned into panic as Darren stirred and his eyes opened. His eyes met mine, and I thought for sure I was doomed. In a last-ditch effort, I pulled hard with both hands. Movies also severely underplay the deafening boom that is a gunshot. The bang from the gun was so loud and sudden that it seemed to encompass the entire world. I was so startled that I fell to the floor. The gun clattered to the ground beside me. My heart pounded so hard in my chest that it physically hurt. The ringing in my ears made it feel as if I had angry earplugs trying to force my ears apart. I hurried to my feet to see Darren sitting on the couch. The top of his skull was wide open and just shot a watermelon. A splatter of blood had painted the wall and ceiling behind him with chunks of skull and brain matter adding texture. As I watched blood pour from him and down to his white undershirt, I was shocked to notice that behind the couch stood Addie. She stood motionless. I met the gaze of her stunning blue eyes, which looked as if they wanted to cry, but didn't have enough energy. She didn't look scared, nor relieved. Instead, her face had an expression of painful understanding. Even at her young age, she knew what had happened. I lifted my finger to my lips as if to silently say, "Shh," to which she gave a single nod. I heard the creak of a door upstairs, followed by nervous footsteps, which quickly brought me back to reality. I placed the gun in Darren's hand and quickly ran into the bathroom nearest the garage door so I could pretend like I'd been there the whole time and was too scared to leave. One of the older boys called 911 while I was still in the bathroom, cleaning a couple of speckled blood spatters off my face. It didn't take long for police and subsequently foster child care caseworkers to show up. I overheard one of the officers speaking to a social worker while I was gathering my few possessions. The officer used the word suicide. As far as I knew, that's as far as the investigation went. The last time I saw Addie, she was being ushered into a different caseworker's car than I was. Although we didn't speak a word, we made eye contact, and that said it all. It was a look of mutual understanding. I'm certain she knew what I had done. She also had a look of relief, knowing that her nightmare was finally over. After making the decision to find my answers, I found a kid who was in a major computer networking and desperate for social interaction. While I prefer to avoid unnecessary social interaction, Brendan craved it, desperately hoping for the approval of our dim-witted peers. Unfortunately for him, he had absolutely no idea how to interact with people. His awkward posture and random unrelated comments put most people off to wanting to befriend him. Despite his annoying awkwardness, Brendan had sometimes had something that I needed from him. His skills and knowledge with computers and the internet were unmatched by anyone I had ever met. So I gave Brandon the social interaction that he so craved and pretended to be his friend. Brendan ate up any friendship I offered him, and in return was willing to do almost anything to keep it. When I asked him to help me track down my former foster sister, he jumped at the opportunity to help his one and only friend. I gave him all of the information I had on her, which honestly wasn't much. I knew her name was Adeline, the county and city where we lived at Darren's house, and that her last name might be Lake. It was about a week later when he called me. Hey, Rich, how you doing, dude? I have a new neighbor, and she's so freaking hot, man. She waved at me. I think I'll send her an email introducing myself. Anyways, do you want to go to the arcade or something? I groaned inside at hearing his voice. No wonder he scared everyone away. Slow down, bud. Did she give you her email address? I asked. I'd become a social interaction coach. No, man, I got it from her socials, Brandon said, as if that wasn't the opposite of correct social interaction. I'd watched people long enough to understand the accepted way of doing things. Okay, man, you can't do that. I'll creep her out. Well, then why does she have her email address available if she doesn't want people to email her? Brandon, I'm not sure how to answer that question, but just trust me on this. All right, Brandon said with a disappointed sigh. So, anyways, the arcade. Then I can tell you about Adeline. Wait, you found her? I asked, wondering why he didn't start with that shocking information in the first place. Hell yeah, man. I'm on my way. After 30 minutes of letting Brendan explain to me in grueling technicalities that I didn't understand how he did it, he finally told me about Addie. She had continued to bounce around foster home after foster home, finding trouble wherever she went and racking up quite a few juvenile records: drugs, paraphernalia, trespassing, truancy, etc., etc. She had dropped out of high school at 16 and by the looks of it, ran off and lived on her own at that point, probably on the streets. But it looks like she has a job, man, Brandon said, apparently sensing my disappointment. She works at a bar called Bare Essentials. Weird name for a bar, if you ask me, but it's only like 45 minutes away. So she works at a strip club, I asked, picking up on what Brandon was missing. Oh, dude, is that it? Oh, said Brandon, as the weird name dawned on him. Well, she's 18 now, at least. Doesn't help, Brendan. Sorry, man, Brendan said before putting his head down in awkward silence. Well, do you have the address? I'm going to go ahead over there. Oh, yeah, man, just let me get my jacket. I need to do this by myself, I told Brendan, reeling at the idea of spending 45 minutes in the car with him. Brendan was disappointed but understanding. After insisting that he'd call me tomorrow, I headed to the address Brendan had given me. I explored my thoughts on the long drive. Why had I felt disappointed in Addie's troubling record of drugs? Didn't impact me, didn't impact my life. So why did it annoy me that she was working at a trashy strip club? The thought of her crawling around for dollars from middle-aged men, giving them power over her, it infuriated me. But why? The address took me into a dirty, slumming part of the city. The Bare Essentials sign illuminated in from dark with flickering dirty pink neon lights. The dim street lights exposed the old brick building fully covered in peeling pink paint with showgirl silhouettes painted in black. Connected by the same parking lot stood a small, dark red strip motel built with discolored bricks that had been crumbling away for years. A dirty shopping cart lay on its side adjacent to the motel, filled with garbage and junk. I walked through the front door, taking in the musk of stale cigarettes. It was mostly dark inside, except for the stage, which was brightly lit. There were maybe 15, 20 people in the building, spread out across the bar in various red or black upholstered seats. All the patrons appeared to be by themselves. Not a single table had more than one person. I casually strode to a chair in the corner, a dark area where I could sit as incognito as possible while having ample opportunity for observation. Most of the men I passed by were middle-aged with large guts, and I even noticed a few wedding rings. I imagine these guys telling their wives that they were working late so they can come to hide in the dark strip club and interact with pretty young ladies. Perhaps they pretend that they are young again, imagining themselves as a young buck that could score attractive women. "What can I get for you, sweetheart?" I looked up to see a woman wearing short black shorts and a black bra, holding a small black notepad. Although she looked to be around 30, her voice sounded as if she'd been smoking for 40 years. "I'll take a Sprite." "Thank you," I told her with a smile, holding out a $5 bill. She rolled her eyes but snatched the bill from my hand and walked away. About 30 minutes went by with various dancers taking the stage before working their way to the floor to give lap dances for suckers who would pay for a close experience. Finally, a new dancer took the stage. The club music was replaced by a much more elegant song, a refined instrumental that spoke of beauty and sadness. The music increased in volume as the lights dimmed, showing only the silhouette of the new dancer. She held onto the pole with both hands, her legs spread in either direction, perfectly perpendicular to her torso. The dancer seemingly floated around the pole in eloquent defiance of the very idea of physics. She repositioned with unmatched grace, wrapping her legs around the bar and releasing her hands. Her torso extended away from the bar at a perfect 90 degrees, with her hands spread away, still floating around the bar. The lights increased, showing more detail. Her face and body matched the beauty and elegance of her dancing. Her silvery blonde hair fell behind her head as if suspended by a broken fragment of time. Her hands once again held the pole, and she slid down to the ground in one slow, smooth motion. She looked up, opening her eyes for the first time, revealing the stunning blue eyes I knew. Our eyes met, and she stared into mine for just a moment. This was her. The little girl watched me paint the walls with Darren's blood. The dancer was without a doubt Adeline. She finished her routine with the same precision and grace which she had started. Afterwards, she walked off the stage without an acknowledgement of the small applause that was not worthy of such skill in the first place. Our eyes met again as she started walking towards me without breaking her stare. Despite the several years since we had last seen each other, we shared an unspoken recognition. A hand reached out and grabbed her by the arm, pulling her off the path to the corner. The person who had grabbed her was a tall, muscular man wearing a tidy black suit. His hair was slicked to the side in near perfect strands. The man looked professional, in a boastful sort of way you see with politicians and businessmen. The glimmer in Addie's blue eyes faded into a dull disappointment as the suited man handed her off to a fat, middle-aged man with a greedy smile slimed across his face. Fatty then handed slick hair cash before grabbing Addie around the back, his hands already working his way to the side of Addie's breast and guiding her out of the side door. I sat in my car at the motel. Undoubtedly, that is where Fatty had taken her. Probably a married, sexually frustrated man, leaving his depressing life behind for the night to indulge himself in an erotic experience that only money could bring him. Finally, I watched Fatty leave room 6, still tucking his shirt around his protruding belly. After he drove off, I put my hood over my head and helped myself into the room. The door wasn't closed all the way, so I simply walked in. She jumped when I walked in, clearly startled, and quickly slipped something into her bedside drawer. "Jesus Christ, can't you knock?" she said before turning around. Our eyes met once again, and she froze where she was. "Hey," she said calmly. "Hey, Addie," I replied. "Been a while." "You could say that, Rich," she said while sliding loose white tea over her bra. "So what brought you here?" she said, sitting back down. "A weird coincidence, running into you like this." I could sense a bit of embarrassment over the circumstances of our reunion. I pulled the chair over from the dingy brown table in the corner and took a seat. "Well, it wasn't a coincidence," I said. "I came here looking for you." "How'd you know where to find me?" she asked, looking perplexed as she pulled a hairbrush from her bag. "I know a computer nerd." "Well, that's kind of weird," she said, handing me the comb. "But I've always hoped we'd meet again. So what happened to Rich after—" She paused for a moment, carefully considering how to finish her sentence. "After we parted ways." She sat down in front of me and motioned for me to comb the back of her hair. I'd never brushed anyone's hair before, but it seemed like a straightforward task, so I started gently running the brush through her hair from top to bottom. Well, I bounced around several homes, hated everybody, but a childless couple adopted me in high school. I'm at the university now. What happened to Addie? Oh, just a bunch of shitty places, juvie too. I finally just left when I was 16. She flinched as the brush caught a knot in her hair. I was on the streets for a while before Alexander found me. He gave me a job and a roof. That slick-haired guy out there? Yeah. That's him. He owns the club in this motel. So he's been pimping you out since you were a minor? I asked, trying not to sound too straightforward, but how else do you fucking say it? Oh, you're one to judge, she said, standing up and facing me. Shot anyone in the face recently? So you do remember, I said quietly, raised more as a statement than a question. How could I forget? She said, slightly exasperated. Getting what I was getting every day and then seeing that man's head explode kind of leaves a mark, you know. I'm sorry, I told her, and I really was sorry. It was the strangest thing. I had no idea you were there. Addie took a deep breath. Well, it's fair to say you did the world a favor. She took the hairbrush from my hand and sat back down on the bed and looked down at the brush. Unfortunately, there's a lot more Darrens in this world. So why enable them, I asked. Why let someone like Alexander rule your life? What else am I good for? There's only one thing people want from me. Who the fuck cares what people want? Do what you want. You be a dancer without doing it for horny old assholes. I can tell you love dancing. It was written all over your face. You're incredible at it. It's my only escape, she said softly, but unable to hide a slight smile while she fiddled with the brush in her hands. Well, then leave this place behind you, I said. Drop the drugs, drop the people controlling you, and leave. As soon as I said drugs, I seemed to have hit a nerve. She looked up, seeming both embarrassed and agitated. Look, asshole, you don't understand, she said, throwing her hands in the air. Bucky Rich kills someone and moves on like it never fucking happened. Ben gets adopted by privileged parents and sent off to college while I had to run away and live on the streets. Why do you give a shit what happens to me? Her outburst took me by surprise, but I calmly reached for her hand before telling her the truth I'd never told anyone before. Truth I was only barely honest with myself about. Addie, I have one memory of my mother. Just one. All I remember is her eyes. She had amazing blue eyes. And every time I see you, I remember her. You're the only person in my life that I've ever cared about. The only one who's ever made me feel anything besides hatred. That's why I killed Darren. I had seen what he was doing to you. She yanked her hand away, and for a second, she looked scared. Her face relaxed as she realized the truth of what had happened that day. She reached for my face with both hands before I even realized what was happening. She pushed her lips into mine. I felt something turn in my chest, sort of like the feeling of falling, but combined with an emotion I didn't understand. I honestly didn't know what to do in those short but lasting seconds that we kissed, but I do know that I kissed her back. And then the door of the motel opened, snapping me back to reality. Annaline jumped at the startling entrance and pulled away from me. "Who the fuck is this?" said our intruder, who I quickly realized was Alexander, the slick-haired pimp who seemed to think of himself as an international drug lord as opposed to the owner of a strip club on the fringe of the city. "Alex," she said, failing not to sound surprised. "I was just catching up with an old friend." "Shut the fuck up, bitch," Alexander said before he pushed her hard. Addie fell hard into the nightstand beside the bed. "Doing business behind my back, huh?" I stood up and moved between Addie and Alex, but he grabbed me and slammed me hard into the small table. I fought to free myself, but Alex was much bigger and stronger than I was, so he easily pushed my head back down and put me in an armbar from which I couldn't outmaneuver. "If you want a piece of any of my girls, you gotta go through me." He ripped me from the table and threw me out the door, where I fell backward onto the pavement. The door slammed shut and I heard the lock click into place. What Alex didn't know is that while he was pushing me into the table, I took the small brass key, which was now in my hand. I stood up, absolutely enraged. I felt angry all the time, and I frequently experienced rage, but never in my life has I felt as angry as I did right now. My hand shook with rage at the man who had just leveraged so much power over me, and even more over Addie. Nobody could be allowed to have that power over me or over her. I always win. I walked across the parking lot to my car and popped the trunk. Looked for anything that I could use as a weapon, but all I had was a small tire iron and some nitrile disposable gloves I used when I changed the oil. Put on the 2 pair of gloves and reached for the tire iron. Before I picked up the iron, the shopping cart in the corner caught my eye. I jogged across the parking lot and kicked around through the trash, where I found an old, rusty but sturdy 2-foot-long crowbar. That was perfect. I picked it up and hurried back to room 6. I could still hear Alex through the closed door. "After everything I'd done for you!" An audible slap was followed by a painstaking gasp from Addie. "You decide to undercut me right underneath my fucking nose, you stupid bitch!" Another strike was heard. That was the one with a definitely closed fist. I quietly put the key in the keyhole and turned it. As soon as the door was unlocked, I ran in the room filled with every bit of rage I'd ever felt in my entire life. Addie was sprawled on the bed, with her shirt pulled over her head and her bra pushed up to her neck, and Alexander was halfway through pulling his slacks down. "I told you to leave," Alex said, trying to pull his pants back up. While his hands were down, I swung that fucking crowbar as hard as I could and connected right into his Adam's apple. He fell back, unable to catch his fall with his legs still stuck around his pants. "Rich," Addie said, scrambling to get up. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Because he can't scream if his larynxes are crushed," I told her. Pulling the crowbar up, a gurgling gasp came from Alex, who struggled to breathe. I swung the crowbar down hard onto his face. His jaw cracked and curved, and the crowbar punctured through his cheek so that I could see it inside of his open mouth. I ripped the crowbar upward, which tore through his cheek, leaving a large gap in the side of his face in which you could see his back teeth through his jawbone. "Jesus Christ, Rich!" Addie exclaimed, putting her hands up to her mouth. "He gets mad sometimes, but it was going to be fine. It was going to be fine. You didn't need to do that." "Yes, I did," I said, as Alex gurgled below, struggling to get air in and out of his lungs. "Don't you ever get sick of people having power over you? Don't you feel it? Feel the rage and show him who has the power." I extended the crowbar to Addie, who took it timidly. "Go on. While he's still conscious, let him feel it," I told her excitedly, revealing in the excitement of Alex's pain and imminent death, "You have the power now." Addie looked down at Alexander, seeming perplexed. Her brows then creased, and I watched her eyes embrace the hatred for the scum that lay on the floor. She raised the crowbar while Alex looked up at her. His eyes were filled with pitiful terror as, for the first time, he lay helpless. She slammed the crowbar down onto his head. There was a thud as the bar smacked him in the forehead. His eyes pleaded for mercy, unable to scream. "There. Now use the pointed end." She let out a grunt of rage as she crashed the bar into his head again, and was rewarded with the crack of his skull breaking. Again. Adding to my thrill, she swung the crowbar again and again and again, disfiguring his face and knocking pieces of his skull away. With each strike, his bones cracked and easily gave way to the rage behind that crowbar. Finally, after 10 or so swings, she stopped. The crowbar clambered to the floor as she took heavy breaths. I admired her beauty in that moment. Speckled blood over her skin and in her hair, before crouching down to look at her handiwork. His mouth was open, his jaw and teeth hanging loosely in the gaping hole that was once his neck. That was my doing. But his head, that watermelon, the best part, that was all Addie. "Nice job," I said. "Looks like you get the last laugh. Winning is wonderful, isn't it?" I looked back to see Addie smile, but instead lost mine. I turned just in time to see her push the plunger of a syringe that was already in her arm. She took a deep, relieving breath and fell back onto the bed. I stood up and looked down upon her, my exuberant thrill replaced with an ungodly amount of disappointment. I looked around the dreary room, the beautiful mess we'd made, then back to Addie, who lay on the bed, so high she barely seemed conscious. And that is when the reality of the situation struck me, and I cursed myself for being so stupid. Sure, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I'd killed multiple people before, but those were planned and calculated. This situation was a catastrophic mess, but because of who I was with, I loved every minute of it. I sat down on the chair from earlier to ponder what had caused this mess. The answer was simple. There was one thing that separated me from the worthless fools around me. I act out of self-preservation, personal betterment, while everyone else acted out of one thing I usually avoided: emotion. I'd never acted with so much emotion ever in my life. It was normal for me to feel anger. I constantly felt contempt for most everyone around me and even rage from time to time. But I kept all of that secondhand. I controlled the rage and let it out only when it was the proper time. That moment being the only exception to my usual behavior. Thanks to the one person in my entire life that had ever made me feel anything. That helpless girl with the stunning blue eyes and silvery blonde hair. The girl who couldn't handle doing what is necessary for herself and instead escaped in the mind-numbing fluid from that syringe. I sat disappointed in Addie, but more disappointed in myself for succumbing to the foolishness of common person. I knew not to trust anyone but myself, but I had put so much trust in Adeline. What did I think was going to happen? She'd be able to handle a murder the way I do? Of course she would panic. She was not gifted in the way I am. To no fault of her own, she was burdened with pitiful empathy. The mess was salvageable, though, and it was time to clean it up and take care of my mistake. I stood up with a plan and a clear mind ready to act. Addie, I said. But she barely stirred. Addie, I said again, giving her a firm shake. Are there cameras at the motel? No. What about the club? No cameras, just in case the police ever came. No cameras. That made sense. Putting cameras around would just be recording proof of the crimes being committed. If police ever came looking into Alex's operation, there'd be no visual evidence for them to connect. I searched around the room looking for anything that could have my fingerprints on it. The chair, the key, the doorknob, hairbrush. Only things I had touched with ungloved hands. I stepped around the scum's body, careful not to touch the blood and leave any footprints from the room. I collected a dingy white washcloth, a grocery bag, and some Lysol. After gently applying a conservative amount of Lysol to everything, I gently lifted Addie's legs so that she lay completely on the center of the bed. I checked the open drawer next to her, which had only one more syringe in it, already filled with fluid. Must have been some sort of narcotic. Rich, Addie said, stirring. I'm right here, sweetheart, I told her gently. Her eyes opened, and once again I was staring into her stunning blue eyes. We killed him, didn't we? She said, perhaps coming out of her daze and regaining some form of composure. You just had a bad dream, I told her, sticking the needle into her vein. Go back to sleep, sweetheart. I'll see you in the morning. I pushed the plunger down, and her eyes closed. I lifted her arm furthest from me. I hesitated to do it. A huge part of me didn't want to. But I had found the one emotional weakness in my life, and it had to be removed. I knew what I had to do. I pushed the knife into her wrist, and moved the blade up towards her elbow, separating the skin and allowing the dark liquid to flow free. Gently placed her wrist down by her side before doing the same thing with her right. Checked to make sure there was nobody in the parking lot before turning and taking one last look at her. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I whispered, knowing that would be the last time I ever meant it. I had to force myself to turn away, leaving my weakness behind. I removed the pieces of blood-speckled clothing before getting in my car and placed them in a grocery bag, and wore only my undergarments and a rain jacket that I kept in my car. That drive home felt like years, but it was an opportunity for reflection and rebirth. I bleached the articles of clothing I'd worn that night and disposed of them. Like my previous kills, this wasn't a sensational news story. The death of a wealthy high school athlete, young college student, broke hearts. But the death of some orphan sex worker and her pimp, that means absolutely nothing to society. Even the empathy of the common man has its limits. I sought out Addie to find answers, and I believe that I have found them to a degree. Although I don't understand the things I felt in those moments when I was with her, I had rendered them irrelevant. The last piece of emotional weakness bled out alongside Adeline, Despite the pain it caused me to do so, I was free.
And the path to psychopath dark side is complete.
Oh,
I don't know which is better, the way it's written or the way it's read. You do a fine job, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And thank you, everybody, for hanging out and listening. Sharing is caring, DJ Riley. And Lady Mist, the guardian of the void. Good evening, Lady Mist. You are very welcome. Thank you for commenting before we hit the outro.
She does that every time now. She's like the stealth comment right at the very end, so no one pays attention to her.
Well, I did this morning. I caught her this morning. So she did that as soon as I started to play the outro, and I was like, nope, hello, Lady Mist.
Thanks for coming by, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for coming by. Guys, we'll see you all in the morning, and we'll see you all next week for another 7 Kind of Mischief. Until then, take care. Be excellent to each other. Always speak friend to enter, and we'll see you guys in the next 7 Kinds of Mischief. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.